This video is to provide you some guidance on how to do the Bix Babble puzzle. And this first part in the Bix Babble puzzle is all about understanding these angle pair relationships. So you can see here the questions are whether these are corresponding angles, whether they're congruent, whether they measure a certain number of degrees, and whether they're parallel or perpendicular. So the best thing to do, first of all, is to look at the diagram and understand what you're looking at. Here it says that this angle is 100 degrees and this angle is 100 degrees. And it also appears that these lines are parallel. So let's take a look at some of the relationships that it will be important for you to know about to do this puzzle. So you should know about corresponding angles, and you should understand that you can have corresponding angles if the lines are not perpendicular, but you cannot have corresponding angles that are congruent unless you have parallel lines. You can have alternate interior angles without lines being parallel, but again, alternate interior angles need to be on parallel lines for them to be congruent. And with same-side interior angles, well, this actually isn't really something that's covered in the puzzle. So it's mainly this, and you should understand straight angles total at 180. And then you should also remember that this little square symbol here means that the angle is 90 degrees. Those things will be helpful to you. And one last thing is vertical angles. So the angles that are opposite, when you have two lines that are intersecting, these are vertical angles, and vertical angles are congruent. Okay, so now if we look at this diagram and we see that these angles are congruent, then we actually can back out that these two lines are also parallel, because we know that these corresponding angles, because they're on top of the line, and they're on the same side as this transverse. So by that definition, we know that they are corresponding angles. And we know that on parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent. But they are not congruent unless the lines are parallel. And so we know these lines now are parallel. And if you want, you can even put that symbol in that indicates parallel lines. All right. And then the other thing that we notice here is, here's that little square symbol that tells us that this angle right here is a 90-degree angle. So that would be a good thing to write in, just so we don't forget, that this particular angle is a 90-degree angle. Okay, so let's start looking at some of the questions that we have on the puzzle. So the first question is angle, or the first statement, which will be either true or false, is angle 1 and angle 4 are corresponding angles. So that angle 1 is here and angle 4 is here. Corresponding angles, according to this definition, are on the same side of two lines and on the same side as the transversal. So if we look at these, yes, they are on the upper part of this line and on the upper part of this line, and they are both on the same side of this transversal. So that follows the definition of corresponding angles. So we can say that this is true. All right, and then the next thing is 1 and 4, angle 1 and angle 4 are congruent. So we know because of this angle that these lines are parallel. And so if we're looking at parallel lines cut by a transversal, and we know that these are corresponding angles, then we know that corresponding angles on parallel lines are congruent. So this statement also we can say is true. The next ones are angle 4 and angle 7, and we're being asked if they are corresponding angles. Well, angle 4 is right here, and angle 7 is right here. So they are on the upper side of both of these lines, and they are on the same side of this transversal. And so by that definition, they are on the same side of the two lines and on the same side as the transversal. So yes, angle 4 and angle 7 are corresponding angles. So that too is true. Now, the next statement is that angle 4 and angle 7 are congruent. So they are corresponding angles, but it says on parallel lines, these angles are congruent. But are these on parallel lines? Well, this line looks like it's slanting down, and this line is going in this direction. And we knew that these two lines were parallel because this corresponding angle and this corresponding angle were both 100 degrees. But here, if we drop down and look at the corresponding angle for this one, where we know what the measure is, 90 degrees, we realize that this corresponding angle and this corresponding angle are not the same. This is 100 and this is 90 degrees. Therefore, because these are not congruent and they are corresponding lines or angles, that means that this line and this line they are not parallel. And so in this case, angle 4 and angle 7 are not congruent because these two lines are not parallel. And so this statement would be false. All right, angle 1, 3, 4, and 6 all measure 80 degrees. So I am going to let you work out the rest of these, but as you can see, you can make logical connections and deductions based on understanding the rules of these pairs of angles and also understanding what straight angles are, what a 90-degree angle looks like, and also that vertical angles are congruent.